Monster Hunter Wilds is finally here, but before you get started, there are loads of settings you need to change to get the best experience regardless of your platform. Even if you played the beta, this is still worth a watch, and don't worry about spoilers either, as all gameplay is taken from a brand new save. The first few settings are in the game settings, and I should mention that you will need to load into a save to be able to access everything here. Anyway, setting number 1 is to set minimap scale while holding to large. Now when you hold L1, not only does a minimap increase in size, but it also zooms in, so this makes for a super easy new way to navigate a smaller area. Similarly, the second setting is minimap rotation, and I highly recommend you change it to fixed. This keeps the map locked north whilst only rotating a player icon, which most people are going to find much easier to follow without being disoriented. If you do change this, you should change detailed map rotation to fixed as well. Now, moving on to the third page of the gameplay section, setting number 3 is Sacred Auto Explore, which you'll really want to turn off. By default, this is turned on, and as a result, whenever you don't have a waypoint set, your Sacred sort of has a mind of its own, which can make controlling it a bit of a pain. So if you like having complete control as I do, disable this. Now just below this setting, you'll find setting number 4, and that's to modify the support hunter settings to better match your preferences. By default, all the support NPCs are essentially able to attack however they like, but you might find that they get in your way, and by having them enabled, monster health and ability will scale up too. So again, if you want full manual control, consider disabling some of or even all of these, but it is ultimately personal preference. Next up is setting number 5, which is to change weapon attack power display to be without the coefficient. This means that the attack power shown for each weapon is truly representative of the raw power that weapon deals, so it's a much more meaningful value that you can use when directly comparing weapons. Moving over to the controls tab, setting number 6 is hold confirmation duration, and you'll want to change this to short. This means that the actions that require an input to be held will be carried out sooner, which could literally be the difference between life and death in some scenarios. For instance, you'll be able to call your Sacred much faster if you're trying to escape a dangerous situation. Speaking of, the 7th setting is on the second page here, and is to change your call Sacred controls from type 1 to type 3. Doing this will still allow you to call your Sacred with the directional buttons on the D-pad, but it will now also allow you to call it by using circle if you have your weapon sheathed. The great thing about this method in particular is it calls it in manual mode, so instead of mounting and it automatically continuing to run in a set direction, you immediately get full control, which feels much less janky and a lot more natural. Now, moving a couple options up from here, you'll find setting number 8, which is an absolutely essential one if you can get used to it. That's to change the aim/focus mode controls specifically for melee weapons to a toggle instead of having to hold it. This makes fights with all sorts of monsters a lot easier, as you aren't having to keep that left trigger constantly held down if you're wanting to benefit from the increased thrust that melee weapons seem to get. Going back to the first controls page, the 9th setting is auto sheath, which again is a must change option. By default, this is turned on, and whilst it technically doesn't automatically sheath your weapon whilst in battle, it can still result in you being caught off guard if a monster unexpectedly appears. Therefore, it's pretty universally agreed that this one is much better off disabled. Next up is setting number 10, which is to change item use controls from type 1 to type 2 if you're using a controller. This makes it so that instead of selecting items by simply pushing the right stick and then letting go, you have to physically push it in. Initially, you might think this seems to add an unnecessary extra step, but trust me, leaving it at type 1 is going to result in costly mid-battle mistakes from just a simple short flick of a stick, so get this changed as soon as you can. Now, before we move on to setting 11, I'd highly recommend that you add Monster Hunter Wilds to your playing list on my backlog. I've personally developed this to be your ultimate game collection tracker, allowing you to defeat and manage your backlog in ways not possible elsewhere. It also features full secure account linking using just your username, making it so easy to get started. You can download it for free using the link in the description. I've put a lot of effort into this, so I really hope you find it useful. Anyway, setting number 11 is in the camera options, and is to increase the camera distance zoom to the maximum. This will let you see so much more than you can by by default, which not only makes the game look better, but benefits you from a gameplay standpoint too, as you'll be more aware of your surroundings and can react faster if you see an item or monster nearby. It's also super useful if you're fighting more than one monster at once. Speaking of monsters, whenever you are engaged in battle with one, the camera will always keep moving back to it. This is incredibly annoying if you are battling multiple monsters at once, or even if you just want to quickly move away to pick something up. Luckily though, the 12th setting is focus camera, and if you disable it, it'll fix this issue entirely, giving you back full control over the camera's behaviour, even if you are locked onto something. It's still super easy to move the camera back to the monster as well, as you can simply just tap L1. Similarly, you can double tap it if you want to aim in the direction that your hunter is facing. Moving on, setting number 13 is exclusively for us controller players and is to reduce your dead zone minimum down to the lowest value that you can before the camera starts to drift. For me, that's actually all the way down to 1, but it's likely it'll be higher for you, so let me know in the comments how low you can go before you get any drifting. With it at that lower option though, you should now feel a noticeable difference in how responsive a game feels, as it starts to register your inputs much quicker, which is incredibly useful for a game like this. On a similar note, you might want to play around with a different base camera sensitivity values, though what you set this to is highly dependent on your own personal preferences. Anyway, setting 14 is in the graphics tab and is to disable motion blur. Now, I'm sure by now those of you who watch my videos frequently have probably seen a pattern here, as I always turn this off. It's with good reason though, as it's essentially adding a blurry filter to what's a visually beautiful game. Therefore, only keep this on if you're playing at a frame rate of 30 FPS or lower, as in that situation it can make things feel a tad smoother. Now, if any of these settings helped you out, please drop a like to say thank you, as well as consider subscribing to help me reach 100k. I'm so close and would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you want to see 40 plus settings you need to change on the PS5 itself, watch your video on screen now and don't forget to download my new app using the link in the description.